Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East. The U.S. forces attacked Fallujah with tank shells and air raids. According to the city's residents, this was the fiercest operation in months. The U.S. forces are advising residents to evacuate the city in preparation for another wide-scale attack on the city. Interim Iraqi Prime Minister Iyad Allawi stated that hope for a peaceful solution is diminishing. Upon instructing citizens to leave Fallujah, the U.S. forces raided the city. Meanwhile, UN Secretary General Kofi Annan warned the United States, Britain, and the interim Iraqi government of waging an attack on Fallujah, saying it would anger the Iraqis even more and have a negative impact on the elections scheduled in January.
اجتياح لمدينة الفلوجة بدأ يلوح في الأفق بعد تأكيد رئيس الحكومة.
Another attack on Fallujah is now looming in the horizon. The Iraqi Prime Minister reiterated that the chances of reaching a peaceful solution are diminishing, adding that they want to free the city's residents from the control of what he called terrorists. Fierce fighting erupted between Iraqi fighters and the U.S. forces in eastern and southeastern Fallujah. The city's neighborhoods were bombed, setting houses and shops on fire. Meanwhile, the U.S. Army is preparing for an attack on Fallujah, and the residents are fleeing the city through the Western Road. It's the only road available for civilians after they closed down the main highway to Baghdad.
الذي يسمح للمواطنين بسلوكه بعد إغلاق الطريق السريع مع بغداد.
I think we are prepared for this operation.
ليس بعيدا وفي نفس محافظة الأنبار التي
Another operation occurred in the municipality of Anbar. This includes Fallujah and Ramadi. These cities are seen as problematic and continue to be raided before the general election. Meanwhile, 4 U.S. soldiers were killed and another 4 were wounded during attacks on their patrol units and during clashes with gunmen. British soldiers of the Black Watch Brigade were redeployed south of the Iraqi capital. This was a U.S. request, asking that the security situation be handed over to British forces instead. An attack on a checkpoint south of Baghdad killed 3 British soldiers and wounded 8 others. With the current situation in Ramadi and Fallujah, the Iraqi citizens are paying a high price. Hundreds of residents are fleeing the city, heading to Baghdad or to refugee camps outside of the Sunni Triangle, fearing the fierce attacks on the city. These attacks kill children inside their homes. A wandering missile hit a house in the city of Miqdadiyya, east of the Iraqi capital, killing 2 Iraqi children.
The missile hit on this side and came into the house. My 3 sisters and my brother-in-law were injured. My son and my nephew were killed.
As the situation is deteriorating, new developments occurred in the hostages case. A Nepalese and another Filipino hostage were released. 2 Lebanese citizens held hostage for the past 2 months were also released. The 2 Lebanese hostages that were released in Iraq have arrived in Lebanon. The hostages Marwan Qassar and Mohammed Hussein were working for the Jubilee company. The fate of the 3rd Lebanese hostage, Sadiq Mohammed Sadiq, is still unknown, except for the recorded message of him saying, "I'm okay," which was received in the Lebanese embassy in Baghdad. The kidnappers remain unknown.
Marwan al-Qassar is an electrical engineer who works for a Lebanese company in Iraq. The Islamic Army released him and his colleague Mohammed Hussein after 40 days. Marwan and Mohammed were kidnapped in Ramadi and then taken to Fallujah. They were released after 1 month of negotiations, which ended after a ransom was paid to the kidnappers.
They made a 3-minute videotape of each of us. The Islamic Army has a religious court which decides the fate of the hostages by sentencing them to death or other sentences. 2 judges sentenced us to death, and 3 other judges decided that our company should pay a ransom.
Marwan says that the area they were held hostage in Fallujah was hit several times and that the kidnappers had a number of hostages and executed some of them. The Lebanese hostage, Sadiq Muhammad Sadiq, the nephew of the former parliament member Habib Sadiq, still has not been released. He worked for an American company and has been living for more than 30 years in the United States of America. His fate is still unknown.
Doctors at the Percy military hospital in France fought to keep unconscious Palestinian chairman Yasser Arafat alive. The permanent Palestinian envoy to France, Layla Shahid, said Arafat was between life and death, but is not brain dead, whereas French medical sources have said the Palestinian leader was in an irreversible coma and would not recover.
He could wake up or he could not wake up. 75-year-old Yasser Arafat was between life and death. The words of the Palestinian leader's spokeswoman Layla Shahid were heard on a private French radio station where she denied French medical reports that Arafat was brain dead. She said he is in a reversible coma. The report on Abu Ammar's health condition was delivered by Shahid on Friday when she confirmed that the president's vital organs were functioning, adding that he opened his eyes and smiled during a visit to the hospital by French President Jacques Chirac on Thursday afternoon. Some reports claimed Thursday that the Palestinian leader had died, but both French medical officials and Palestinian officials have denied this. However, they made clear that his clinical situation has become more complex and tried to give a less dramatic picture of his condition.
As we mentioned before, he is not in a coma, he is not in a dangerous situation, but his condition is critical and serious, and he is still in need of more medical care.
This added to the confusion on a day of great suspense, but a spokesman for Luxembourg's government quickly retracted Prime Minister Jean-Claude Juncker's statement saying Arafat had died. The Israeli TV's Channel 2 cited Israeli security officials as saying they had been told by what they called a reliable French source that Arafat had died.
In this issue, there are conflicting reports, and I instructed the ministers of the government and all those dealing with public relations that as long as there is no formal announcement, we will not give reaction to this. So I rather not comment on this issue.
Palestinian officials fiercely denied Israeli reports that Arafat had passed away, but maintained his situation was serious.
We are still waiting, and we are in constant contact with our French friends, as well as the president's wife, Mrs. Suha, and the team accompanying the president.
Arafat was also dead for re-elected U.S. President George W. Bush.
My first reaction is, God bless his soul.
Bush's second reaction was that his administration will continue to work for a free Palestinian state that is, according to him, at peace with Israel. Supporters of Arafat have meanwhile mounted a vigil outside the military hospital in Paris. With all reports pointing to sharp deterioration in Arafat's condition, Palestinians voiced worries about losing the man they revere as the father of their nationalist struggle and the only leader they knew. Arafat was flown to Paris last Friday for treatment of a series of blood disorders after being airlifted from his compound in the West Bank town of Ramallah, where he had been under effective Israeli house arrest for nearly 3 years.
Palestinian officials refused to begin planning for Arafat's funeral or coordinate with Israel on the movement of attending foreign dignitaries as long as his condition remains unclear. But Israel reiterated it will only permit the Palestinian leader to be buried in the Gaza Strip and not in Jerusalem. Also, Israeli security officials said that they oppose allowing Arafat to be interred in the West Bank, including the Jerusalem suburb of Abu Dis. Palestinian leaders held emergency talks on Friday amid worries about post-Arafat future. Palestinian Prime Minister Ahmed Aqra took over some of Arafat's powers over security and financing, and both Israeli and Palestinian forces were on high alert. Palestinians are living in a state of confusion as Yasser Arafat struggles for his life. It is not easy for them to imagine the departure of the man who led them for nearly half a century, especially amid concerns over a possible post-Arafat anarchy. Across the West Bank and Gaza Strip, Palestinians were on the streets to show support for Abu Ammar, while insisting that talk of Arafat's permanent demise was premature. Palestinian officials are trying to make sure that his death does not leave a power vacuum or trigger an outbreak of violence in a society where the number of fighters has mushroomed during the 4-year uprising against the Israeli occupation. All the branches of the Palestinian security services were placed on maximum alert late Thursday. In Abu Dhabi, Palestinian Prime Minister Ahmed Qurra met with the U.S. consul in his office. The meeting came a day after receiving some additional powers following Arafat's physical decline. And former Palestinian Prime Minister Mahmoud Abbas emerged as the frontrunner in the succession race. Abbas has been acting head of both the Palestine Liberation Organization and Fatah since Arafat's departure to Paris last week. Israelis were meanwhile trying to absorb the implications of the apparent end of the Arafat era. Occupation security forces operating in the West Bank and Gaza Strip were placed on maximum alert. A clampdown was imposed on the West Bank and increased security around occupied Jerusalem's Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. The entry of any Palestinian man into 1948 occupied territories under the age of 50 is forbidden, even if he has an entry permit, and only women over the age of 35 would be authorized to enter. Meanwhile, Israeli army commanders want the government to capitalize on Arafat's demise by coordinating the Gaza pullout plan with his successors. But Sharon is unlikely to want to involve the Palestinians in the Gaza move.
Palestinian President Yasser Arafat's condition remained stable in a French military hospital. A hospital spokesman said Arafat's health has not got worse, adding that he was considered to be stable compared to the last health bulletin 24 hours earlier. Palestinian envoy to France, Leila Shahed, denied the 75-year-old Palestinian president was brain dead and said he was in a reversible coma. Also, the Palestinian leader's top advisor, Nabil Aburdaine, told reporters Arafat was not in a coma, although he admitted that his state of health was very precarious. Doctors carrying out tests on Arafat still did not know what was wrong with him, despite ruling out leukemia. Palestinian leaders held meetings in Arafat's compound in the West Bank city of Ramallah. Palestinian Prime Minister Ahmed Qurra, who took over some of Arafat's executive powers, held a series of meetings amid concern over Arafat's health. The Executive Committee of the Palestinian Liberation Organization granted Qurra responsibility for urgent matters involving security services and government finances. Mahmoud Abbas, a former prime minister who has taken provisional charge of the PLO, attended the emergency talks as well as other prominent Palestinian officials. Senior Palestinian Minister of Negotiations Saeb Ariqat said Israel should show respect for the 75-year-old Arafat.
President Arafat's situation is the same. Contrary to the reports about being clinically dead, the president is not clinically dead. The president's brains function, his organs function. His situation is difficult, yes. But all the talk about him dying or clinically dead or brain damage is absolutely untrue. I would call upon the Israelis to show respect and sensitivities. I've seen some Israelis dancing with the news of President Arafat's death. This is shameful and this is heartbreaking. And I would urge our Israeli neighbors to show some respect and sensitivities.
Arafat's condition has stirred speculation not only as to who might succeed him as Palestinian leader, but where he could be buried. Arafat has said he wants to be laid to rest in occupied Jerusalem's holy old city where he was born. But Israel ruled out the possibility and sees Gaza as a burial site. Palestinian Minister of Foreign Affairs said that it was too early to discuss the matter.
There is going to be an independent Palestinian state with Jerusalem its capital, and whether President Arafat is alive for a year or 10 years, eventually there will be a state in which he can choose in his will where he wants to be buried, in his own country and not outside his own country. I still say he is very much alive, and we would like to delay any discussion of death not too much later.
Muslim faithful attended Friday prayers in the heart of Jerusalem's Old City, praying at the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa mosques in the Haram al-Sharif compound. In Gaza, armed Palestinian factions met in a show of unity meant to avoid strife in a possible power vacuum. The 14 Islamic and secular groups met in the Gaza Strip to discuss Arafat's situation and put on a united front amid warnings of chaos if he dies. Iraqi interim Prime Minister Iyad Allawi has said time is running out for a peaceful solution to end the insurgency in Fallujah. He was speaking after having met leaders of the 25-member European bloc in Brussels. Allawi also made his first visit to NATO headquarters to ask for more help from the alliance. A NATO source said all envoys present stressed support for rebuilding and stabilizing Iraq. But France and Germany noted that unlike the much larger US-led multinational force, NATO had no combat mandate there. Allawi insisted that there were no strained relations with France after his remarks criticizing some countries for being spectators on the question of Iraq's future. Allawi vowed to liberate Fallujah from what he called terrorists and said he hoped the security situation in Iraq would improve and would not disturb the elections.
We have been asked by the people of Fallujah to have them, to liberate them from the terrorists and insurgents who have taken Fallujah as a hostage, and the Fallujahs as hostages, and we intend to liberate the people and to bring the rule of law to Fallujah, as we did in Najaf, as we did in Al-Sadr city, as we did in other places in Iraq. And the window really is closing for peaceful settlement. The Fallujah people have left, most of them have left Fallujah, and the insurgents and terrorists are still operating there.
Sudan's government refused to sign a security deal with rebels designed to end violence in the western Darfur region, saying the document drafted by African Union mediators was too one-sided. But mediators said they hoped for agreement in the Nigerian capital Abuja by the weekend, now that the rebel side agreed to sign the plan after 2 weeks of talks. The draft security agreement drawn up by mediators calls for a military no-fly zone over Darfur and the disarmament of the pro-Khartoum Arab militias known as Janjaweed. The UN Special Representative to Sudan is urging the Security Council to take action to halt a surge of violence in Darfur. Jan Pronek briefed the Council on UN Secretary General Kofi Annan's latest report on Darfur. He said attacks were on the rise on all sides of the western region. Diplomats from France, Britain and Germany met their Iranian counterparts for a round of talks to persuade Tehran to give up its uranium enrichment program. However, diplomats did not expect any breakthrough. A diplomat close to the talks said Iranian negotiators will offer to temporarily suspend their enrichment program for 6 months. But this proposal is unacceptable to the EU's big three powers, who want Iran to agree to an indefinite suspension. Even if an agreement is not reached today, Tehran hopes that the EU trio and Iran would at least be close to some kind of a deal ahead of the November 25th meeting of the UN International Atomic Energy Agency. If no deal is struck ahead of that meeting, the EU is expected to support Washington's demand for a referral to the UN Security Council and possible economic sanctions.
أكد الرئيس الأمريكي جورج دبليو بوش في واشنطن معقبا على الإشاعات بوفاة
After rumors that President Arafat died, the United States President George Bush said, "May God bless his soul." He said this before rumors spread by Israel were discredited about the death of the Palestinian president. In his first speech after his re-election, President Bush promised to make efforts in his second term to revive the peace talks in the Middle East, in addition to achieving the goal of establishing a Palestinian state that lives in peace with Israel.
حدث في أول مؤتمر صحفي يعقده
2 days after he was re-elected for a second term as president, George Bush held a press conference where he was asked to react to the news about the death of Arafat.
ورد فعله على ذلك.
God bless his soul.
وقد دعا بوش للرئيس الفلسطيني بالرحمة إلا أنه
Bush asked God to have mercy on the Palestinian president's soul. It appeared that he was surprised by this news. The American president said that the United States will continue its work to establish a free Palestinian state living in peace side by side with Israel. Despite conflicting news reports about the health of the Palestinian president and his death in Paris, Washington was busy talking about the effects of Arafat's absence and President Bush's role in the peace process in his second term. In the Brookings Institute in Washington, Martin Endrich, the former Deputy Secretary of State for Near East Affairs, said that the Palestinians have begun to really look at their position after Arafat, indicating that Arafat's traveling to France has not led to a civil war. However, Palestinians have begun appointing members to the Palestinian Authority in an official way from the leadership of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. In his press conference, President Bush also said that he agreed with British Prime Minister Tony Blair, who stressed the importance of achieving peace in the Middle East. He pointed to his wide-scale plan, which he announced in July 2002, which included 2 states serving the interests of both Israelis and Palestinians. He expressed his hope in achieving progress towards this goal. Jim Zogby, the director of the Arab American Institute in Washington, said that the Bush administration and Israel treated Yasser Arafat shamefully, humiliating him despite his stature and age. Zogby doubted that Arafat's absence in the Palestinian affairs will help the Bush administration begin a real peace process, saying that Arafat was treated this way because he embodied the rights of the Palestinians, and Abu Mazen and Abu Ala were also treated in this shameful manner. In addition, he said that the United States and Israel may try to begin to support a new leadership like they attempted in the past. However, he said that such leadership will be rejected by the Palestinian people. After this re-election, President Bush held the first meeting of his cabinet to talk about his agenda for the second presidential term. Although Bush acknowledged that there will be changes in his cabinet, he refused to offer details, saying that he has not made any decisions yet. A news source in Washington confirmed that the Secretary of State, Colin Powell, will leave his position, suggesting that the current United Nations representative, John Danforth, will replace him. It also confirmed that Attorney General John Ashcroft will leave his position. Some reports indicate the possibility that the National Security Advisor, Condoleezza Rice, will be appointed to the position of Secretary of Defense, replacing Donald Rumsfeld. President Bush's first press conference after his re-election clarified that he, as he says, will work with strong support from the American people, as it indicated by the latest elections. According to Bush, his agenda will include fighting terrorism, spreading freedom and democracy, returning stability to Iraq, and peace process in the Middle East. However, the United States President left out a lot of minute details under these headlines. We will see how he works out these details in the second presidential term. From Washington, Mohammed Sutuhi, Nile News Television.
The supreme leader of the Iranian Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, confirmed that Iran does not need nuclear weapons, explaining that what worries the U.S. is the advancements that Iran has achieved on scientific and industrial levels, as well as nuclear technology in particular. He added that Iran has introduced an Islamic model that can be emulated.
The political pressure exerted on Iran over its nuclear file by the United States and Europe has dominated this Friday prayer sermon which was delivered by the supreme leader of the Iranian Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. He accused the West of adopting a policy of domineering and monopolizing sensitive high technology, emphasizing that the West is angry because Iran has managed to advance in all scientific levels, and especially nuclear technology.
في بعض التقنيات الحساسة أصبحنا في طليعة الدول المتقدمة.
We are in the lead of advanced countries in some sensitive high technology. Dozens of countries have the ability to use nuclear energy, but there are no more than 10 countries that possess nuclear technology. This is the reason behind the noise they are making now.
Khamenei stressed that Tehran does not want and does not need to militarize its civilian nuclear program. He was sending a clear message to calm fears in the West that this technology might be used for military purposes.
They accused us of wanting to develop nuclear weapons. I say to them, no, we are not thinking of developing atomic weapons. I said many times that our nuclear weapons are these young men. We do not need atomic weapons.
Attempts made by the supreme leader of the Iranian Islamic Revolution to calm fears in the West coincided with the third round of talks that was described in Paris as decisive.
The Europeans know very well that we are not going to develop nuclear weapons, and we do not need it. We are asking our Iranian leaders to stand strong when facing European demands in these talks.
The United States and the West are looking for justifications to achieve their objectives.
The US, Britain and Israel do not want our country to be independent. Our religious beliefs are against developing nuclear weapons.
This view is widespread among Iranian people and political leaders. The European and Iranian sides are trying to show flexibility in their negotiations in order to avoid transforming Iran's nuclear file to the United Nations Security Council. The decisive word came from the highest leadership authority, confirming Iran's non-negotiable positions concerning its nuclear program and sending a strong message to the Europeans that there is no doubt that Iran has the right to take these positions. Avid Bahrouz, Al-Alam Television, Tehran.
Concerning Iraq, the supreme leader of the Iranian Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, said that the occupiers who entered Iraq under the justification that they want to defend the Iraqi people are now the reason behind the lack of security and spread of poverty and disasters. He also said that they are robbing Iraq from its resources and killing innocent civilians.
The Iraqi people are going through a tremendous catastrophe and difficult test. The hands of the occupiers are behind what the Iraqis are facing, including the injustices, lack of security, and spread of poverty and catastrophes. They entered Iraq under the pretext of defending the Iraqi people, but now they are the reason behind the tragedy of these people. They stripped the Iraqis of their dignities, robbed the country of its resources, destroyed their cities, and killed innocent civilians, including women and children everywhere.
The views expressed on Mosaic are not those of Link TV or its sponsors, but of the broadcasters themselves. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation and Henry and Virgilia Dakin.